Pleasure. We welcome back to the show General Jack Keane, Fox News senior strategic analyst. General Keane, that was just a little mini riff, but I just don't believe President Trump's going to fall for all this stringing along business. I don't believe it, sir.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I mean, the Iranians, once again, are miscalculating when it comes to our president. I mean, clearly, they got something they did want. I mean, they closed down the Straits of Hormuz. What purpose was that? To stop the war. And the president saw it as an opportunity to go into negotiations. And then the Iranians' objective of the negotiations is just as accurately as you just stated, was to drag this thing out, believing time is on their side here. And the pressure on the president would grow in terms of political pressure with the midterms coming, economic pressure, obviously, with oil prices and its residual impact on our economy. They were counting on all of that, certainly, to create that kind of pressure environment so that the president would accept the deal that previously he would not. But President Trump is not going to do that. I mean, he is steadfast in not accepting a deal that's not in our interests. And after all, we have all the leverage here. We have a blockade, and we have the threat of going back into combat operations. And I think the meeting in the White House yesterday was likely about that. Where are we now, and how do we assess this situation? Where do we think the Iranians are? And I am assuming that the president's assessment is that he's leaning towards going back to conduct combat operations. It makes the most sense. One, we maintain the blockade. Two, we finish what we started. We took the pause to see if there was something real there in terms of negotiations. We know now that's not the case. We've got about 2 weeks, Larry, to finish up what we started, and that is take all of Iran's offensive capability away from them so they can no longer be a predator in the region. And the good news is, since the war started, sitting right now, the United States Command in the Middle East has twice the capability it had when we started the war, because we've never given up bringing in additional capacity. And the Israelis are flush with munitions to recover the shortages that they had as a result of where we are. So we're definitely going to meet all of the assigned objectives that President Trump has given us and Prime Minister Netanyahu has given into the Israeli Defense Forces. And that is the best course of action, in my judgment, going forward. I think other things we can do is, well, if we're not doing already, is for the Central Intelligence Agency and Mossad, their intelligence service, to work together to do everything that we can to further undermine this regime. We know we're weakening it militarily significantly. We know it's going to be weakened economically. But let's also weaken it politically inside its country and enable the people also, over time, to be able to demonstrate their will here and get this regime out of Iran once and for all. For those who, Larry, who believe that the status quo is where we should be, in other words, keep the blockade on, they keep the Straits of Hormuz on, and we try to ride this out because Iran will eventually collapse. If you look at the facts, it is certainly the case that eventually, with that blockade on, denying 80% of the revenue that Iran gets is no longer theirs, that is a fact. Eventually, there would be economic collapse. But here's where this regime is. We can't look at the regime through the prism of United States logic, values, and reason. We have to look at the regime in terms of who they really are. Hardliners are running the regime. What matters the most to them is to stay in power. They will ride this economic peril out. They don't care about the suffering of their people. Shutting electricity down, gas lines, and other economic indicators that the people are suffering, that does not move them. What does move them is the desire to stay in power. That is why we must go back to combat operations and maintain the blockade and use our intelligence services to undermine this regime so it does not just suffer economic collapse, but political collapse as well.
General Keane, if when military operations resume, Will they? Is it inevitable that we go after the Karg Island complex, which is really the whole Iranian economy or what's left of it?
Yeah, I think that option would certainly be on the table for the president. And my thought about it is I would keep it there till the end. And so our viewers understand Karg Island is a major distribution point for all the oil that comes out of Iran, actually 90% of it, and a significant amount of their revenue. That is what the blockade is really denying them, for ships to go in there and load up or ships to come out with tankers on it, and also denying all the cargo ships to come out as well. So yes, Karg Island is, I believe, is a strategic asset for Iran, and it certainly should be within our wherewithal. And I think at the end, we have a couple of choices. Do we use it as leverage? In other words, we're going to destroy it, or here's the terms that we want from you. And I like the word surrender, is what it would be de facto. We probably wouldn't use those terms to them, but the reality is that. Or do we actually just destroy it and force the economic collapse? So our viewers understand Iran will still likely have some retaliation capability. We cannot take out every ballistic missile that's in storage sites or every drone. So there would likely be some kind of retaliation that we will see when we go back to military operations. But every single day, we continue to chip away at all of that retaliation capability, not eliminating it totally, but eliminating it for them to be able to sustain a military operation. We're on a very good path here. I think the president understands exactly what's happening. He's given Iran an opportunity, and they haven't fulfilled it, and nor did he likely expect them to, but he thought he should give them the opportunity.
So, some say that the CENTCOM planning and so forth, it needs, they've done about 75 to 80%. They have another 20% plus to do. And it won't take all that long. And that was part of this, planning from the very beginning, and that's what's going to happen in the next stage.
Yeah, I think probably mid-May, our military operation is likely over. It had about 2 weeks to go when the president stopped it. And it may go a little faster because we have even greater capability. I don't know that for a fact, but there's some logic behind that thought. But it's going to be very aggressive. It'll be a comprehensive campaign. It won't be full throttle immediately. We have to get out there and make certain the air defense systems have not recovered, that we really do have air supremacy and we can move with freedom throughout the sovereignty of Iran. So we'll use that caution to make certain that that's all in place. But yes, it's not going to take a long time to accomplish the assigned objectives that have been given to the militaries.
And General, just the last one. Why is it wrong for me to think this should be an unconditional surrender? I mean, we have destroyed their capabilities. Iran, you yourself have said many times, Iran will never be the same. And that's a very good thing indeed. And we've destroyed their nuclear capabilities. And we've destroyed their industrial and military complex. And the chances are rising that there'll be some kind of insurrection among the civilian population. But the key point is, we have some very simple demands. You have to transfer the enriched uranium. You have to cease all nuclear operations, limit your missiles, open up the strait. You see what I'm saying? I don't understand. Iran negotiating, quote unquote, a word I don't like. They're not our equal. They have lost this war. They've been destroyed, whatever their propaganda is. We've won this war. I mean, this is MacArthur signing the agreement in the Pacific Ocean off Japan in World War II, if you ask me. This is U.S. Grant telling Robert Lee in the Civil War.
Yeah, there's no doubt about that. I mean, our terms are maximalist terms. And the reality is that we're not going to accept anything less than that, in my view. I mean, I think that's exactly where President Trump is coming from. He wants no support for proxies. He wants to see the evidence of what that is. He certainly doesn't want any enrichment to take place in the country, even for civilian nuclear purposes, because why? If you let them have a little, they'll eventually get a lot, because they cheat. and they lie about it. And certainly we want to take the enriched uranium that they already have in the country out of there. And their ballistic missile program, that is their major conventional weapon. This is the thing that the Israeli intelligence and our intelligence was so concerned about because they were accelerating the development of ballistic missiles after the 12-day war with the assistance of China, bringing in fuel and components and deeply burying these storage sites so they would be indeed protected. And the concern was that this program continues to explode, at some point it's going to overwhelm Israelis' ability to defend against that. So the clock was ticking here. And people seem, in the media at least, to forget what the justification here was. And it was a serious justification in terms of why to take action now and not wait. All of those objectives are going to be achieved. So you're absolutely right.
Yes,
Iran will not have much left of anything, Larry.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. That's the way I see it. Anyway, General Jack Keane, thank you, sir. We always appreciate it. Thank you for your insight and your wisdom. Appreciate it.